we'd like to approve the minutes of the August 18th meeting. We got those. I read them through. I found them okay. There was a lot discussed. Is everybody okay with those minutes? No amendments? Take a motion, please.
Well done.
Those. Second motion.
Motion made and seconded. Are you up to snuff, Jamie? You ready? You need time?
I'm getting there. Who's second?
Motion second.
Jay, skip second. All in favor?
Aye.
Public speak. Now, if you're on the agenda, you do not have to speak now, but if you're here just to visit and you want to speak, now's the time. No? Okay. Communications, I wanted to tell you that I received an invitation tomorrow night. The lights are up on the football field, and I'm going to speak and talk about how wonderful the CPA is to the community, and you get to do this project. It'll be like 5 minutes, nobody wants to hear me. But that's at 6:30 if anybody wants to come.
Is there gonna be a game?
It's beautiful. There's a game. It's the first night.
Wow.
In fact, I went down there last night. I had to pick up my grandson who's playing in the midi football. I couldn't believe it. There's only 4 poles, and it's bright as day.
I went down there 3 days ago and they weren't there, and I was like, come on.
Yeah, that's
They
what
went up quick.
She went up and I went, they're there?
Yeah.
Because they weren't there 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I just drove by, I was impressed.
It was impressive.
Yeah.
And what I'm happy about is you don't notice they're on until you get way down in the White Brook, so it's not going to bother the neighbors, I don't think. Anyway. The other thing is I did get today in the mail, you might have gotten it, a Mutterfield October 8th, 10:30 invitation for opening. We did approve their request last night for the additional money. The Finance Committee approved all the CPA requests last night, so you should know that. The Housing Authority one, the 2 Housing Authority ones, and the loan program, etc. Do you have anything else, Jamie, for communication?
I'm just gonna say that, same things.
Okay.
Beat me to it.
Well, we have their account balances in the minutes. Any questions on those, guys? They were in the minutes.
So does that have the updates for, that's from? Yeah, so that does not include the affordable housing partnerships set aside.
Because they weren't approved.
Right, so.
Well, do they get put in there if city council hasn't voted on them?
I put in a thing what's appropriated and pending.
Pending. Okay.
So that we can look at what's remaining.
What's remaining? Okay.
But that zeroed out the affordable housing set aside.
So, anything else, Jamie? I do want to go to the preservation plan, which we received from Jamie. It is the final document. I assume we have to motion to approve that. Any discussion on the final I thought the meeting went well, and I thought there was information given to the community. Any discussion, questions on the final document? Okay, I need a motion to approve the 17th preservation plan.
I move to approve the community preservation plan. Also 17.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
0. Thank you. All right, continuing and hearings and review of applications. The Park and Rec Department is up first. John, why don't you come to the table so we can see you. So there was a lot of discussion last time. I was reading through the minutes to get myself familiar again with them all. One of them was the bathroom, whether or not it could be redone, and there was some discussion by members on how the entrance bit would be redone. So I wanted to, John, are you prepared to answer those questions? I think you sent us an email.
Yes.
About how the cost of the bathroom being totally rebuilt would be not really practical. Is that, why don't you go into those details?
Yeah, to follow up on last meeting, the stone building outer doors are ADA accessible, so we don't have to worry about messing with the stone work. It'll be easy to get in there and take care of the work and get it to be ADA accessible. Constructing a new bathroom based on the last time we constructed one in the park in figured out the cost of labor and everything else that's gone up. We figured it'd be around $250,000. That's twice as much as what we'd be asking for to renovate the current facility. And then the discussion on traffic flow and bike access for the entrance. That was the plans or the schematic that was presented. That was just, off the, scribbling, a quick meeting. So that's not our final, draft. And I have contacted the city engineer and Joe from DPW regarding if this project moves forward to get their input on traffic flow issues and make sure we have bike access as a concern as well. Make sure we incorporate that for entrance and safety for the park.
So the plan you gave us does not include that at present? The one we looked at?
Yeah, that was done in 2011, so that was,
That's not current. then.
yeah, that's not current, no. That was just,
Well,
give a
after
general
this-
idea of what we were looking to do.
Do you need someone to design this new plan? Is that what-
Yeah, that's part of that.
Part of the funding you
That's
need?
part of the funding, yep.
How do the members feel about this? I'm okay, because I trust Park and Rec Director, but not seeing a plan when we all had questions about that. I'm wondering what you all thought. Think about the fact we don't have it's kind of a cart before the horse in that we're approving a plan that will come to us based on his ideas and what we've seen as a draft. But on the other hand, they can't do a plan until we fund it, I guess.
Yeah, the state will not reimburse any costs associated with the project before they give approval on the grant, which will be in February or thereabouts. So
And
they
you
will- they
can't
will
get
not
the
reimburse. So
grant
if we did any work, preliminary work at a cost, it would not be reimbursable to the city.
And you can't get this grant without funding from the CPA as matching funds
Correct.
prior to.
And there's a timing component, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why we have to
So-
hustle this out.
Yes, so it's by year end.
I mean, I don't know what our options are as far as, I mean, ideally, it would, it'd be great to have
Well, we'd like to
a
see what
finished
we're.
design, but the design work is part of the grant proposal.
Yeah, I think it'd be similar to what exactly what was done with the boardwalk. It was up on Mayor Mike's wall, and it was a schematic picture of what it was gonna be. And then,
So what we saw.
then it was moved forward into the design and plan phase once the
Okay.
money was available.
So obviously this happens quite often. You can't spend any money to get the design finalized until you get the money, and we want to see the design, so it's really hard.
Well, the design, for the most part was, I think, on point.
Fairly close.
Fairly close, yeah, just,
Mhm.
getting all the experts in and reviewing it again and having, whatever landscape architect we select to do the work.
You need bid ready documents is what you need. You got schematic and what the grant would actually pay for, similar to the boardwalk is bid ready box.
Well,
I'm comfortable funding it. I mean, we've got some language in this funding worksheet regarding access for all road users, and, maybe we can make it more specific if people have concerns, but, based on what I saw from the last meeting, and, I think we've made our priorities and concerns known, I'm personally comfortable funding it.
what's curious to me, number 6 is what Ryan is saying, and I think that's sufficient language for me as it is, because it says for all road users, the park entrance we're talking about, John. What's concerning me is, and this is for all applications, what if something isn't done based on our conditions? I mean, I don't know what we would do. Stop funding? Because it's reimbursement, right? Is it reimbursement?
No, for the Parks and Rec, because it's a
City
city
department.
department, that, as soon as the
Money's-
city council makes that appropriation, it goes into Parks and Rec's budget.
What if the project's done under budget?
Then
It can
everything.
stay over there, does it come
No,
back?
no, everything that's under budget comes back to us, so this has happened, John's given CPA money back, Barbara's given CPA money back. Every project that's had a surplus at the end of it has.
With regard to city departments as well as private applications.
Yes, but with the private, it never left the CPA.
Oh, it doesn't get out, that you reimburse there. Okay. Well,
Is
here's the
there-
deal.
Is there other precedent, like, I mean, like people that have been on the committee for longer, like in situations like, because I agree, it's, I mean, from the discussion, I trust where this is going, but I mean, theoretically, there could be design that could come back that there would be further questions or concerns with. Is there precedent where this has happened in the past, where there's sort of been like a second, funding for a bid-ready dock and then a second review to be able to further approve something, or?
I know for the boardwalk, there was public sessions, right, for the design and as that went forward, so, I don't know if there's a public component to this piece, but if there is, then the CPA committee would obviously be.
Well, but he has to get the money to get the designs done.
Yeah, I don't think it comes back to the committee. We've never done anything where it circles back around to the
Here.
committee for
Well-
another round of design approval. But what we have done is, if we feel strongly about certain conditions or provisions to whatever grant we have, then we make that explicit. So if there's something that, based on our discussion, we're concerned about, we can actually state, explicitly in the documentation and as part of the condition of the approval.
Well, we're saying that, but the design is post-approval process. So, to me, it comes
So
down to
where's the
trust.
teeth? Sure, no, absolutely, but I mean, I think it,
The teeth is this: if the Park and Rec Department doesn't follow through, and we're not happy, and I think that's not gonna happen, then it'd be hard-pressed for them to come back to us.
And I think we pretty much have a long history of being able to come in on budget and do projects at.
Right, and that's where the trust comes from. We trust our
so
department.
you
heads.
see it as an issue of trust. I see it as an issue of clear communication. Like, I think if we have something specific that we want, we're doing a disservice to our grantee to not make it clear what exactly our expectation is, because then later on down the line, we can have some, it's just some
We don't
difference
wanna
of
be
opinion about,
ambiguous.
what our understandings were might be different in the end. So, I mean, I don't think it's a trust issue for me so much as if we want to be explicit about certain things, now's the time to do that.
Well, number 6 does, talking about the park entrance. Number 6 says, "The design for the park entrance shall incorporate accommodations for all road users as described in the city's complete streets administrative policy." Does that need to be more specific to satisfy committee members? I think it's pretty, in the city's complete streets administrative policy, bike access is part of that. So we could write, "and shall include bike access," et cetera, Is ADA access something we need to worry about in that? No?
That's under complete streets as well.
So that's all there. All the accommodations are in complete streets, so we're referencing a policy that's on the books. I don't know, how do we feel about that?
My concern with the reason I brought that up at the time, and it's in the minutes here, is that new interest does not preclude future connections to the Manhattan bike path.
Mhm.
So that was actually my thought about that, like not just bike access, but tying this into the larger network, potentially doing that down the road and having that be a thought in the design process.
It's similar.
So maybe just putting that in the work,
We
Not
could-
that, and I think you heard that anyway, and that would be done anyway, but if
Well,
that's.
if the committee feels that that's really important, we should put it in the conditions. I have no problem if you want to write another one. Yes?
What would that, I mean, I would support that. I mean, in some ways, it's similar to what we were just talking about with the football lights. One of the provisions that we put in was putting the football lights far enough back that in the future, we could possibly have a 6-lane track going around that football field at Whitebrook. There's no track there now. This sort of a space, kind of.
But we made
creates
accommodations.
the possibility for it in the future, and if we want to be explicit about connectivity to the Manhattan or something, I don't know what the language would be, but I mean, I would support it.
After 6, you might say, "This shall include future accommodation for connection to the Manhattan Rail Trail and other recreational access." Something like that?
Sure.
Is it Manhattan Rail Trail specifically what you were thinking
I
of?
mean, that is, but not exclusively. I mean, what you just said, I think would be fine.
And other
Yeah.
recreational access. So add that to 6. Did you get
clarification on that, though. Is that binding us to, what is that binding us to as far as this project goes? So,
That.
I don't think it would be that, it would be the connecting, it would be
Yeah.
the entrance to future connect, you know, like,
Design criteria.
Yeah.
Looking at designs through a lens of possible, possible connectivity in the future.
I mean, if it's impossible, you could tell us.
I don't
that.
think,
Yeah,
I don't think
no, it's not impossible, yeah.
It's no bright line.
Yeah.
It's something, to be looking at as you go into the design phase when you're thinking about
yeah, just
what
because,
works the best.
as we look at the numbers and we're scoping out this project, running a connectivity towards, the trail, the rail trail. is
But I think
part of
what
it,
they're
so that's
saying
why
is-
I'm
Yeah,
just wanting
I don't
to-
think anyone's calling for a,
Yeah.
new paved access directly into the rail trail net, it's just a design that doesn't
Impede
foreclose
future.
that in
Yeah,
the future.
Yeah, you're not gonna build a big wall someplace
Because
that's
we're also talking
obviously you'd
about
have to take down.
connectivity, not even going through that entrance, but around the backside of the tennis courts or something like
Yeah.
that. But it's just keeping it in mind so that it seems like it doesn't impede it.
Greg's football and the football light analogy is really, is really apt. There's no track there, but now there could be, where if they were 5 feet in, there couldn't be,
So I don't think we're asking you to add to the project or add to the design, but don't impede the possibility of access. Does that make sense, John?
Yep, that's.
That'll be added to the,
I addressed that in my
that'll be
email.
added to,
Yeah.
did you get a copy of these conditions? Project funding worksheet, you got that, John?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, guys, we want to add to this? I think it's complete, and I have no problem with the project as it stands, personally.
Remind me the timing on this and when we were thinking we were gonna vote on
Well,
this?
one of the things we were going to discuss is the funding cycle discussion was, the next funding cycle is what, November? If we waited till November to vote on this, then it doesn't go to the city council for 2 meetings. And you need to know before December 31st, John?
That's correct, yep.
So my feeling is when we have projects that have unanimous support, we don't hold up because of the timeline with regard to the other government and council, et cetera. Why should we wait on it? As long as we know, we have competing projects now coming to us, some of them big, the Cook one is $300-some-thousand. So those we might think about making sure they go through the funding cycle so that we can decide if we can afford them. What, Barbara?
I have another thing that connects to that, is that on your agenda for tomorrow, next week's meeting, is potential for borrowing bonding for this project, so it may make sense to have them kind of come together. So
This is a
you're-
new item?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I didn't know that.
maybe I wasn't supposed to say that.
That's part of the grant requirement.
Right,
Yeah.
but it might be.
So in other words, he's putting in a grant requirement that's going before the council at the same time as this requirement.
Right.
So it makes
Well,
sense
it's
to.
yeah,
Have it
it's
all
pending,
together.
Has
based
to-
on tonight's meeting, yeah.
Well,
I'm okay letting that approval be at the
We'll be able to
council
get
level
the
though,
city council next Wednesday.
No, this won't go to the city council till the meeting after that. But both items have to go to the finance committee. And so I'm looking at this to be approved the first meeting in October by city council, maybe. And the other one might be able to be approved before that, but that's only because the timing, that doesn't need 2 committees' approval, the other one. It just needs the city council, finance committee, and then the council itself, so. This will become before the council, if it's voted on tonight, at the next council meeting. Then it goes to finance, then it comes back for public hearing, first meeting in October. Is that right timing? I think that is. So I feel that we should vote on these unless, I understand the reason for the cycle, because if we have competing projects and large dollar amounts, we might have to make priority decisions. This is doing exactly what we want the CPA to do, leverage another grant. The other grant can't be had unless we give it to it, so, to me, it's something we should do.
I agree.
Anybody else, is everybody okay voting on this tonight, out of cycle? Okay, I'll take a motion then.
Make a motion to approve the Daly Field Nantucket Park ADA project with the change to the project funding worksheet that Dan mentioned earlier,
For the amount of $138,000.
$138,000.
Let's put that in.
Second the motion, okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show that was unanimous. Thank you, John. You're welcome. Next thing is East Hampton City Clerk. He's here.
Who made the second?
We've done a project like this in the past. It's historical document, digitizing historical documents. Am I correct in saying that?
No, it's, well,
It's not digitizing,
it's not.
it's organizing.
It's taking the books out of, well, this is one, this is your, on the list that's in the back.
Mhm.
This is the big dog. This is, the last of the old marriage licenses, and I know some of you are kind of new, so I thought I would bring it up again. This is how they're held together, and then what the company does, which does lots of work all over New England, is they take it and they put it in Mylar sheets. And if anybody wants a copy of it, we just take the book apart and we make a photocopy. We don't have to like worry about it.
Ripping it.
Yeah. I don't know
Dry
if
rot.
anyone wants to take a look who hasn't already seen these, but I don't know. You can just ask them.
So we did a project like this, I think, 2 years ago?
You've got the list. You've done, this would be the 5th
Oh, right.
year.
This 2013, we did 15,000.
This big volume of marriages we skipped because it was so big. So this actually is the volume that comes after that one. We've kind of done all around it.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, so it's very nice. Also, in addition to doing that one big book, wanted to finish up the births up to 1953, because from 1953 on, if you came into my office for a birth certificate now, it comes out of the computer, the state now, so we don't really have to access those as much. So the ones prior to that, we still go in and we take it apart and make photocopies and certify it. So it'd be very nice for my office to have it done up to
Pass it around.
when they're now all on computer.
When you say they're on computer, from 53, they're scanned.
The state has a database.
Oh, really? They're not even,
All, yeah, they imported, they had some of it on, so from 1953 to present, going forward, it's, you know, put in the date and the name and it prints out. We don't have to access the old records.
okay.
And deaths, now is in a similar system, but that's only starts in 2014, so we're only on the second year of that. So I'm just kind of trying to, there's a few little gaps here and there. Like the births, the marriages, so I'm just trying to kind of get big clumps of the records that are in the least accessible binders, so that they are nice and accessible and they're protected, and these are all acid-free Mylar. Mylar things. Anybody ever wanted to see any of them, they can stop down.
Someone wanted to do a history of East Hampton 100 years from now, they'll have access to
It is
documents.
very cool.
People use this for genealogical stuff.
Right, exactly.
You know,
There you
family
go.
search, so.
And they're originals.
So is this the last set of documents we have to do, or are there more still?
Well, you know, we could just keep going. It kind of brings me to a good point, but I have to say some of our death records from even more recent time periods, it was on non-acid-free paper. They're yellowing. I mean, we're talking in the like 70s and 80s. Some of them are not original and some are original. So I have to kind of figure out what to do. But this kind of takes care of big bunches of, we've done a lot, and
To me, these kind of things, what is precedence for doing all those death certificates, for instance, in the state and other communities? Is everybody doing this? Is it recommended that we do it?
yeah, a lot of communities have done the very same thing, you know, and they use this very same company. Some
But
of
they
them-
do it for all their records? They're not stopping with marriage
Oh,
or birth?
I couldn't tell you what exactly every community is doing, but a lot of communities do this very same thing.
But you don't know, well, I'm only
Yeah.
alluding to the fact that you have other records that you might want to do.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think this brings me up to a pretty good point, you know, I mean, we could stop at any time, but, sometimes it's like the ones that I would access that I have to take the whole thing apart and they're hard to get to and they're rusty and falling apart, those are nice when they're in something like this, and you know they're protected. There's a lot of books.
Well, we'll leave it to you to
Some
decide.
of them are not originals, like, say, the original might be in Northampton, not in East Hampton. So, the older records, these are pretty much, you know, these are original records.
Okay.
What's the significance of 1906 as the starting date?
Well, I think that was a gap.
Is there anything before
Oh,
1906?
No, not before 1906. All we have is, we have big ledger books, and it's all handwritten in. The story was that there was a janitor that threw away old purse. I don't know if that's a story or if it really happened, but our original records start in 1906.
So we have nothing before
But
1906?
before 1906, I have them in big books, like
We do
where
have
they
them.
were, and those have been done earlier. So those books are all done.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And I know, we have them going back to 1785, but those old ones are in a big book, and we don't have original records. We have to go by what's in the big ledger.
They've been preserved or
Yep.
updated a little bit?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. If anybody ever wants to stop and see them, we have town meeting records, we have, going way back. But our original certificates start in 1906.
And these are stored in this building?
They're all in our building. We do not have a vault. We're supposed to have a vault, but if this building was to burn down, unfortunately, you know,
Okay.
they are stored here.
I don't see any problem with this. The way we do this is we're gonna give a condition sheet out and probably vote on it at the next meeting. Does anybody have any other questions
You're
on
not going
it?
anywhere.
Is there an option to scan and digitize the page while the book's being taken apart and rebound?
I
or-
think there may be. I've not done that. I consider it ask.
I
Anybody-
assume there'd be an extra cost associated with that, but.
The guy with the drone out there, is anybody
Yeah.
bothered by that? That's bothering me. It's all right.
Oh, there it
Anyway.
It's a public meeting,
Yeah,
you can just come right in, you know? You don't have to spy with the drone.
That's funny. Anybody else have any questions? That was a great one.
The scan, I think a lot of these have actually already been scanned, but they're scanned through either the Church of Latter-day Saints,
We do
you know, the Mormons have gotten to them, and Ancestry.com and so forth. They'll have these scanned images. If we were, as the city were to scan them, I guess presumably we'd put them up on our city website or something like that. But you know, I mean, I think
There's a lot of
I don't think
labor.
there's anything that we
That's
would
labor
necessarily do
intensive.
with the scanned images that hasn't already
Yeah.
been done.
Years ago, when we were up at the town hall, they did, people from Utah, whatever, they came in and they didn't scan these, but they scanned a bunch of the books. And they did give us copies of the microfilm, and I have them in safe deposit box. I can't remember what year, because records after a certain date are not public. It changes like every 5 years, records become available that anybody can look at. So I can't remember what the year was, but they did.
Any other discussion on this? Okay, Barbara, this will come before us at the next meeting for final approval. And we will do a condition sheet, which will be just a basic template. I don't think of any conditions. Does anybody want to add any conditions other than what the basics are? Okay, good. Thank you, Barbara. Department of Public Works and Planning Department, drinking water supply. Is this, Jess, is this you? I wanted to see Joe too. Where's he?
Oh, no.
Is he supposed to be here?
Yes.
Oh, boy. We're asking for $343,000. Ed, what's the matter? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
The request is for $343,762 of CPA money, and this is to protect land that actually is in Southampton, am I correct? It is protecting our drinking water supply.
Correct.
So it's open space preservation, and my biggest question is, it's okay, like the Hampshire County, it's okay for us to protect land that is in another community because it supports East Hampton's needs, in this case, water preservation?
Because the state enabling legislation specifically says that money, any CPA funds can be used anywhere in the state.
Oh, really?
And that,
I didn't know.
on top of that, because the state matches the funds, you know, this is CPA money that's actually raised by all Massachusetts
Mhm.
taxpayers and not just East Hampton.
Right.
There
So
are
if we
no
wanna help,
problems funding any project anywhere in the state.
okay, that was a question I had for the Hampshire Council of Governments too, so that answers that. It's pretty straightforward to me. We preserve this land and we're protecting our aquifer.
Correct.
Is that the base of this? Our planner is here. You guys all know Jessica Allen. Yes. You want to say anything to this, Jess?
Sure, couple of notes. First of all, just to sort of introduce who else is here, Barbara LaFlamme, who is representing the property owners in Southampton.
Oh, good.
Marla Hank, who is Southampton Conservation Commission. Virginia, there's been a lot of people sitting around the table, so, for these projects. Also
Virginia
Southampton.
Ahart, Southampton Community Preservation.
And then Mark Walmsley, who's with Kestrel Land Trust. So this property was first identified for aquifer protection in 1989, and I believe there's a letter in the packet that was sent by Stuart Becker.
I saw that,
My
yes.
predecessor to the family. And so this has been a property that has been on the town and city's radar screen for quite some time. As you may or may not know, we have the Barnes Aquifer, that is our sole source drinking water supply for the city of East Hampton. We have several wells throughout the city, but the aquifer is the only source of water that we pull from for our drinking water. So it's critically important that we protect the aquifer, and as you all know, we have the best drinking water in the country that has been pulled from the aquifer. Plan after plan in East Hampton has always identified the Barnes Aquifer as a major natural resource for priority protection. More recently, the family came back to the table. This has been ongoing discussion and dialogue for years now. And Southampton, as you know, is booming in terms of residential growth. This property could sustain 14 single-family houses, which would potentially degrade the water supply by having single-family homes, pollution fertilizers, dog waste, that sort of thing. So these are all critical things to think about in terms of what could impact the water supply. We have been meeting, the two communities, plus Kestrel, plus the mayor, have all been talking about this project, sitting around the table, trying to figure out a way to make it work for over a year now, I know it's been 2014. So it took a long time to come to a way to figure out how to split it equitably between Southampton and East Hampton. And a grant has been put forth, a land grant, which is a land acquisition grant through the state. Kestrel took the lead on that, put the application together, and that's been sent. A site visit was held with representatives from the land grant program about a month ago, not even probably. Couple weeks ago. We'll be finding out in November whether we're funded or not. So the way that this is split, the transaction is a little bit complicated, so if I can just take a few minutes to sort of just explain how it would work. Southampton would end up owning land. East Hampton would end up holding the conservation restrictions. So we would be able to be setting the rights in terms of what activities could happen on the property because we own the conservation restriction. And so we would want to make sure that as it's being drafted, that we're allowing uses that are not going to impact the water supply. The way that, and Mark can speak to this better than I can, but the way that this sort of shakes out is that the CR is worth way more than the land is in the end. And so the way that Kestrel has basically put this deal together is that the land grant would pay for $400,000. Southampton has already appropriated at Maytown meeting $380. If you turn to page of the budget in your packet, item number 6. So Southampton's contribution for the fee acquisition of the 25 acres is $350,000. East Hampton's contribution would be $300,000 for 2 conservation restrictions, and I may turn it over to Mark to explain those details. And then $400,000 through a land grant. So this is how we are planning to sort of equitably split it up the best that we can. The owners are already giving a bargain sale. The land appraised higher recently, but they're still willing to sell it for $1,050,000. So that's less than actually the value of the land at this time. So they're giving a bargain sale to make sure to make this deal go forward. If the land grant is not awarded to the town of Southampton, who is the one who applied for it, the backup plan is to apply for a drinking water supply grant. So you'll see in the budget that there's a contingency one of $25,000 for each Southampton and East Hampton. Southampton has already appropriated theirs to the town meeting, and that would cover the $50,000 gap between the maximum amount awarded to a drinking water supply grant versus the maximum amount awarded to a land grant. So you can get up to $400,000 in land, you can only get up to $350,000 for drinking water. So that's that contingency. If the land grant is awarded, that money would not be needed, and we would be able to turn it back to the CPA committee for the project. So.
Unless there are other contingencies?
Unless, but we do have a second line item, contingency number 2 for $5,000, which is to potentially cover maybe some legal costs that we're not aware of if the baseline inventory comes in higher than we anticipate. But all of those have been accommodated for above that first project total line. And these numbers have been developed by Kestrel as they've been trying to figure out the steel impediment to that. So Southampton is still paying more in the end than East Hampton, but we get the benefit of having the conservation restrictions. So the way that the deal is to be structured is that the land grant would come through. There's a fabulous chart that Mark put together.
Is that the one with the
The
pies?
graphic.
The pyramids.
Yes, the
Pyramids,
pyramids.
Which are
sorry.
roughly meant to represent the shape of the land. That's what we've got. This is somewhat triangular.
But I think this is a really great way to sort of represent the complexities of this and how it would work. So, so Southampton would purchase 15 acres of land in fee for $700,000, $400,000 coming from the land grant and $300,000 from CPA. East Hampton would purchase a conservation restriction on 10 acres for $300,000, which is a bargain sale. The family would hold on to the fee ownership of that 10 acres with a value of $60,000. So that kind of shows you the difference in terms of the value of the land, the CR versus the land itself. But the land itself is only worth $60,000, but the CR is worth $300,000. So
That's on 10 acres.
That's on 10 acres.
Can you explain for somebody who's not familiar with the marketability of conservation restrictions, how that's valued and why, what do you do with a conservation restriction that gives it
You're taking away
value?
the development rights. So they, as they explain in law
So the
school.
value is really like what the developer would be willing to pay for to be able to develop it, is that?
No, it's the highest and best use of the land. So if a developer were to buy the entire property in fee, so all the rights, including the development rights, this was appraised actually at $1,160,000, but again, the bargain sale of $1,050,000. The way that land breaks down, when they value out the lots versus the after value, so what the land would be worth after the CR, the development rights are taken out, I believe, if I remember correctly, that the CR value, the development rights, were $980,000, around there. And the remaining value of the land was only around $60,000 once the development rights were taken out.
So the idea is the land is worth a lot less if you can't develop it.
Right.
And that's sort of the market
Exactly, fair
valuation
market, fair
of what
market
you
value.
know, if you're able to develop it.
So you guys are going off the premise that basically the CR plus the fee equals the development value.
The CR
or
versus
this-
the after, no, just the CR is really the development values. The CR plus the after value is the full value, the fee value of the property.
That's what I-
And just one of the tricky things here, which made putting the project together so tricky, is yes, the CR is so valuable until someone acquires the land using state or CPA funds. At that point, you're required to convey the conservation restriction. If you're acquiring land in fee, you're required to convey the CR to another entity. either a private land trust or another community, at that point, the CR becomes valueless. It's actually a liability, because it's, you know, it's a regulatory CR. You're forced to give out with this CR. So that's why the deal got so complicated. No one could just buy the land outright and borrow the money and then have, say, East Hampton buy a CR on it. It just couldn't happen that way. Again, I won't get into all the complexities. We'll try and keep it as simple as we can. But we tried to make it simple and elegant, and this is the solution we came up with. And surprisingly enough, the state was reassured by that. They were undaunted when we applied for the land grant. They said, there are a lot of hoops to jump through here. The fact that it's complicated sounds right, at least at first glance, to make this work, especially between two communities and a piece of land that was worth so much money.
Two questions. Is this restriction for eternity? What is the?
Perpetuity?
Perpetuity. Eternity for me, perpetuity. So there's no chance that this restriction would be removed in the distant future in any way. When we buy it, that's it. And so, because we own it, Southampton can't change their minds
Right.
at all.
There's, and just, because I know that you love to go back and what's happened with CPA money in the past, so there has.
Precedence is a good thing.
I know, you love it. So, we, again, before my time, but there was a land deal that was structured between Southampton, Holyoke, and East Hampton using drinking water supply grant money, and the CRs still are on those properties, and that's down at the bottom of East Hampton. There's several properties that are on all three properties that have this, that went through this sort of same process.
I remember that, actually.
CPA, and then it's protecting the drinking water supply, and there are restrictions that run with those.
And that's all tracked through the title of the land
Yeah,
over
so
time?
if you go through the deeds, you
Title
can find
search.
it, absolutely. Yep.
Those are the Block Cousasia Fournier properties.
Correct, yep.
I will just answer your question, though. There are two ways a CR can be overturned. 2/3 vote by the state legislature can turn it over, and land could be taken for eminent domain by something like a large natural gas pipeline. Unfortunately,
Oh, boy.
but those are the only two things.
He didn't
really
say
hard.
that.
Well, but that's,
That would happen anyways.
for this drinking water, yeah, it would be highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely.
They almost never happen, but to be fair, there are ways.
Why would the state do that?
That's, it would be highly unlikely.
And the other question I had, Jess, is what would we allow? I know we allow trails and things on other restricted land. What would we be required with the restriction, or is it Southampton that would develop the land for uses that would be allowed in this way?
So this is sort of the check and balances of why the state wants one entity to own the land and somebody else to hold the CR, is that there's this check and balances. So we haven't crafted the CR yet. We could definitely use the CRs that were placed on those other properties that I previously mentioned as bases, and those do have some public access, but I think we would want to be cognizant of things like fertilizers or waste from animals and which animals.
We wouldn't allow farm development because it's aquifer or
I
anything like
believe, that would have to be talked about and considered, because if it was organic farming, that may be okay. But if it's somebody who's doing conventional farming and using pesticides and herbicides, that might not be okay. So.
I would hope it wouldn't be.
It might depend on what they, I don't know enough about.
Yeah, okay.
the chemicals.
There was a community garden suggestion as one of the options.
I'm sorry?
There was a community garden suggestion as one of the options in the open space recreation plan for Southampton.
And
So-
another option would have been, as we have over our side of the aquifer, we have a farm that's rented out to a farmer, he pays it, and it's in his license, he can only use, manure only just before he's gonna till it, and potash and lime, and that's it. So it's totally controlled, but that's why we were looking to you to know, so that will help us. Then, can we put a park on it, which that's kind of expensive? Should we lease it to a farmer as we have our land over the aquifer? Could we put in a community garden? There's many different things, but you have to let us know. And I wanted to say that when the site visit was held with the state, Bob O'Connor, for the land grant, he made it clear, he said, you understand you can't change your mind later as a town and want to put a school here, right? You get the land grant, that's it. And I said, yes, that's why we want that here. So the land grant also guarantees we can't do anything with it without 2/3 of the state legislature.
Does the land grant itself put restrictions on what can be there, like? no-
I
mean,
don't remember the details, you, for land.
Yep, there are some standard things that they look for when the state reviews it, they want to see those. State reviews the CR draft.
Well,
because-
access, public access.
Yeah, there's some things they want to.
because there's open space protection, and then this is aquifer. To me, that's a whole nother ball of wax. We have to
It
make
is,
sure
it
that,
is.
that's protected real well. And I trust the communities that that's why we're doing this. I don't know if the committee wants to see that in the conditions, or whether you want to see the CR coming forward.
There was a draft that you submitted with the land grant, correct?
Yeah, it was a pretty generic CR. The state is using a standard template CR right now. It can be tweaked quite a bit, but we kind of filled it out. And that's the standard for these things.
I mean, I would feel, CRs really need to have attorneys in the room, and, you know,
I think that's something that you would have to,
it's gonna get hashed out, and you know, I think there's enough people at the table that we're gonna make sure that all the bases are covered.
right, you're not gonna law firm license.
Who does the CR?
Attorneys, so we would work with our city solicitor.
Well, maybe
But is it-
mechanics.
I mean, it's not this body that would determine what the
Oh, no,
actual
no, no, no.
restrictions are, we're
No,
just
no, no, no,
approving
no,
it,
we would-
but at what point do the conservation restrictions become, do they coalesce? and
Well,
become
they would
clear?
have to go before city council eventually, I mean, it has to have a council sign off, so.
Conservation
so-
gets
Well, I was gonna
involved.
ask about the timing on this. We approve this, if we approve this, say, at the next meeting for the November cycle, because it's a lot of money, I think we wanna wait for that cycle. Number one, do you have a timing issue with regard to either sale or closing or
Grants.
grants?
That's a Mark question.
Yep, we need to know support from both communities by the end of the calendar year.
So another December one.
It's the same, and it's the same agency that does the land grant, that does the park grant that Johnson.
Oh, really? So, are those competing?
I'm sorry?
Do they compete?
No,
No,
not
they're-
Landon Park, different.
Thank you.
Different pots of money.
That just scared me a little bit.
Same agency, different pots of money.
All right, so,
And just also to clarify something that Jess said, we are actually going to start putting together the drinking water protection grant, just in case anyway. I think the RFP just came out. I'll hear about that tomorrow. And I think we're gonna start working on that with BayPAC, just to have that second swing at the plate ready to go if we need to. We don't wanna, this is really our last chance on this project. The family, we had an option to purchase the land, and that's already expired, and Barbara has done a really great job working with her family members to kind of keep it open, so we'd have one last quick shot. So this is really it, and I think it's been encouraging to the family that it's moved forward now this far after so many years. The vote in Southampton this past spring was amazing. For those of you who were there, 174 people. We really had no idea going into that public meeting whether it was gonna get voted, and it was unanimous, and people stood up and cheered afterwards.
unanimous?
It was unanimous.
174 people voted yes.
Exactly.
That doesn't
And it
happen.
wasn't only the $86,000 that was appropriated, it was the full 700. They have to borrow the rest, because again, it is a reimbursement grant from the state.
Okay. With that in
And
mind,
there's 14 family members? 11. So there's
11 heirs to keep happy.
oh my God. Okay, I don't want to get into that side.
Just so you understand how
Complex it is.
how complex it is, and there are members of the family that don't want to see this protected and would like to sell it off immediately and get the money. So there's
There's a developer waiting in the wings, you could say.
Okay. So, Jess, you said something about the CR has to be done before the city council votes on it?
well, the CR would get drafted and the council votes on all the CRs. So it would go
But
to the
not before
property.
the
it would
CPA
go-
funding.
it would go to the
CPA
property-
gets funds first,
Right.
and then it goes to the council, but when it goes to the council, you would have to put in the CR.
The CR would be a different track and a different project. So the CR would be going before the property subcommittee.
Oh, that's a different, okay.
Because it's a
Yeah.
real estate related.
It's a real estate, yeah. So that would be a completely different,
But obviously, if we approve this money, we are saying as a council, as a CPA, that we'd like this restriction to happen. So when it goes before the property committee, those details are simply approving the details of something we've already essentially approved by virtue of spending the money. Because we buy it and then the CR happens, we have to buy the restriction? Or is that something, I don't know, how does that work? I mean,
how does the,
Probably has to be recorded on the property,
well, the
right?
CR, but I'm just with.
That is an interesting point. I will have to look into exactly the timing of that.
The CR relation to everything else.
Yeah, how the CR comes together, because the state takes their own time with CRs. And of course, I mean, they're gonna be an even higher watchdog on this. They will
Good
provide
point.
the grant money, they will know what the natural resource values they're trying to protect through the land grant on this. So no matter what gets hashed out between the two communities about the CR language, it still has to go through the state's
And the
lawyer.
state's gonna be the one, it's their money too, so, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can delay
CR
things.
review process.
Assuming all goes well, what's the timing of step 1 and step 2? Assuming the land grant
There
comes
was
through.
there's a timeline in the packet.
Is it on the last page?
Review the budget somewhere. Yes, project timeline number 5, after the maps.
Page 7.
Page 7. I missed it. Got it.
So Southampton approved their vote in May, the grant was submitted in June. We should be hearing in November whether we receive the land grant, is that correct?
So,
And so it looks like fall of this year we would start to develop the CR once we hear whether we receive the grant.
So are step 1 and step 2 essentially simultaneous, or are those two distinct events that happen with some time between them?
there's a number of distinct events that happen here. And to some degree, East Hampton is kind of on their own track in terms of, to satisfy the state grant requirements, it's really mainly Southampton's thing. The state just wants to know that East Hampton has approved it, but it's kind of not less important. It's, again, you only have to meet the timeline at the end of the calendar year for that. In terms of East Hampton actually purchasing the CR, that could technically happen at any time. Honestly.
After we approve the money.
After you approve the money, and obviously you'd want to see that, the state grant funding is approved. And the way the CPA, the way the town meeting warrant was worded for Southampton, that money is only going to be appropriated if East Hampton, votes to appropriate their money and one of the two grants comes through. So there's 3 legs to this stool that all have to happen for the project to happen.
And we don't distribute CPA funding until the CR is ready to go and it's approved by the council? Or is the money kept in a account for us, I would think,
Yeah, I'm
right,
trying to
Jamie?
think of the last CR we purchased was the Paul Street extension, which was through CPA money. And, I mean, we would have, I don't know how the attorney part works with working with Jack, whether we'd be paying for it, out of the CPA or whether the mayor's office would pay for his time, but, we would need to get the city solicitor's time, and that may be substantial prior to any acquisition happening, so we may need to pay for his time.
And then reimburse it through the CPA. Good. Okay, this is another out-of-cycle possible issue. When's our next cycle, November meeting? That's too late to vote on this if this is a December 31st deadline. Because it has to go to the council then, first meeting council. Could be voted the second meeting of the city council, but that's really risky if we don't have a quorum. Simple as that. Then it can't get voted. We have to call a special meeting. So I would rather do this earlier than that, so I'd like to get this approved at the October meeting, again, out of cycle, only because of the deadline. This is a lot of money though, so I'm putting that out there, but I'm not saying that, I don't want to pressure anybody. That's just out there because of the timing of it all. To me, personally, now that I know everything, historically, this has been something we've been trying to do in the city for a long time, starting way back with Stuart Beckley, and the opportunity's not going to come around again. And I believe the owners when they say there's a developer waiting in the wings, because that's always the case. There's a lot of pressure on open space, and Southampton is doing a lot of development, so that makes sense. So, that's just me. I don't know. Members?
Agreed.
It's a big project, but it seems like an important project, and yeah, it seems like with open space and aquifer, once they develop it, you can't turn back the clock on that. You're not gonna get it back into valuable aquifer land anymore.
And one of the things that I'd point out, and again, it's why this land is appraised so high, I mean, there's a decent amount of aquifer land that's, if not buildable, but you can fit 1 or 2 house lots on. this is such buildable land, and one of the reasons it is because it's flat and it perks incredibly well.
And it's got
Well,
access, it's got road
access on two
access.
roads, it would be an A&R development, it wouldn't even have to go through any sort of subdivision process, this would be easy to build and just put a bunch of houses on it, this is really rare to be able to protect something that this, developers want this much that's over the recharge area of the aquifer, not just the aquifer in general. This is the small area where the water actually filters into the aquifer and flows towards East Hampton's wells. And just as a reminder, this is a great thing to keep in mind, why is Southampton interested in this? East Hampton is the only active backup water supply for the town of Southampton.
Where do you get your water?
I'm in Florence, so.
Southampton, where does it get this water?
They do have, they have a well.
Wells, it is, I thought they got
Well,
Barnes
singular.
Aquifer.
Well.
Singular.
But,
Yeah.
so they get reservoir water
No,
from Hoyer?
It's into a different spur of the Barnes.
It is the aquifer water.
But
It's
we
not
don't
connected.
have
But
enough.
it's upstream.
It's upstream, so we don't.
It's a different area, so they have a single well, they're already drawing to capacity, and as summers have gotten warmer and drier, they're drawing on it earlier and drawing on East Hampton's water earlier and earlier. They started drawing, I believe, in May this year.
And they're working on it, and that's why it's unfortunate that Joe Kuczynski is in here, because they're working with Southampton now to make that connection more permanent, not like, oh, let's go turn it on because there's a drought. So the side of town here, where this property is, with all of the huge number of subdevelopments, which have the latest fashionable, very large lawns, drawing, so between the paving over and making it so the water can't go in because it's impermeable, and then using it for the lawns, that's, at least it will prevent the latest fashion in yards.
Well,
Okay.
I think this is a great project. I've been a sort of a fan of it. I'm really happy with the way that the structuring of it has come together. I mean, this particular project has come to the CPA's attention a little bit over, the course of whatever, a year and a half. So I am wholly comfortable with where it stands and also sensitive to the timing. So I don't know exactly, in my mind, I'm ready to approve, I mean, this is just speaking for myself, but I'm ready to approve this project, this evening. I don't know what, in your mind, Dan, you want to
It's
have happen
September.
between now and October, except respecting the fact that it's a large amount of money, so.
I think the conditions that we've set up as the template we have for conditions ought to be still done. We can approve this in October, it goes before the city council, and then it's approved in November. It's still a month before the deadline. So I don't think that's just me. I think we as a committee have set up a process for all applicants. And there is some timing pressure, but we did the same thing with the Park and Rec. So I believe we should do that with this one. We should do the
Well,
conditions.
we should talk about conditions so the worksheets are ready for October.
Right. Well, even that amendment we made tonight on the Park and Rec, that doesn't delay us from getting it to the city council. She just made the amendment.
Right.
So the conditions would be only with regard to the CR being approved by the city council, of course. And that's an obvious one, but that could be in there as far as the other standard conditions, reporting back to the committee, big CPA sign someplace.
Yeah.
And going to the,
And that's usually required by the grant anyway.
Right.
You need to.
but we've been trying to make people aware of the fact that the CPA is spending your money wisely. Not sure everybody in the town agrees with that. But the standard conditions, Greg, I think we can wait. I mean, I think we can vote on it next meeting and not have a problem getting it through before December 31st.
You know the timing better than anybody. We just, did a vote this evening for parks that had the same December deadline though, so I just wanted I wanted to put it out there that I am ready to give this project as much sort of flexibility with the timing and movement as we can, so. If October works for me, if it works for everybody else,
We could change the meeting to the first Monday in October, or the second Thursday in October, if only to get it before the council sooner. This is an option. Not sure.
Is there a concern, I mean, if we approve it the next meeting at the regular, that would slow, I mean, I think nobody wants to slow it down. So is there a concern that that would impede
I mean,
anything?
I think we would obviously would want it tonight if we could, but I think October is okay too, Mark.
Yeah, I'm less sure of the schedule in the community, but again, as long as we have a final vote on it before the end of the calendar year, that's really the deadline that they want to see.
What documentation you need to provide the grant funders? Do you need a copy of the council vote?
Yeah, I would probably need an official record of the vote. That would be the strongest.
It would be voted on November 16th. If we vote on it October 20th, the standard meeting date, October 6th, it goes to the council on the 2nd, we'd get it there by the 2nd, so that it goes before the council to move it to finance. Finance would approve it for public hearing on the 16th. There is an advantage to being the chair of the finance
November
committee.
16th, that seems like that's sufficient amount of.
Right, and you
wiggle room.
still have, if there's a problem, we still have 2 meetings in December for the council. If somebody says, I'd like to continue this because I want to make sure this is right, I don't anticipate that, but it gives us 2 meetings of leeway.
Where does it go? It goes back to the council after finance though, right? So that.
Everything, every appropriation from the council by state law has to go to, well, by charter, has to go before subcommittee. Finance committee has to
Finance is
approve.
November, but the final vote.
The
would
final
have to
vote
go
is
in.
November 16th.
But
November,
it's available to
November.
Council vote, right?
It goes to the councils and then move to finance on November 2nd. Finance committee meeting would be November 7th.
Okay.
Or November, wait a minute, let me make sure my dates here. November 9th is the finance committee meeting, November 16th is the public hearing on it. That's when it would be approved.
Dan, do you expect any opposition to this in the council, or you think this will just cruise right there with the rest of our funding requests?
No, I don't expect any problem, because we have the luck, and I'm gonna speak highly of our planner. We have the luck of having all of our department heads do a good job of explaining what we're trying to do. And you know what, I have to say this, if there's unanimous support from the CPA, and I'm assuming you guys are all in favor, but if you're not, even 8-1 or 8-2 votes, or 7-2 votes, the council has historically approved it, because really, the CPA money is really this committee's purview. If we want it to happen, it's gonna take a lot for the council to say no. Because we're in charge of this money, and it's really, it'd have to be something ridiculously controversial, in my opinion. And I don't see that happening.
I think everybody at that meeting will drink water.
Yeah, water's.
Yeah, water's not controversial.
Water's kind of important.
And in light of the drought we're having, it's more important to make sure every drop that does fall.
There you go.
This guy gets down
There you go.
Yeah.
And you know what? Southampton's putting a lot forward. A unanimous vote by their legislative body is incredible. It means that they understand that East Hampton's water supply is important to Southampton, so I don't, and it's just, I don't see any problem.
Alright.
But again, we have 2 meetings in case. Okay? So we're gonna do conditions, we're gonna vote on this next meeting. I don't know
Is there
who
any
need.
information you need from this team here to follow up, or really you have everything that you need?
Committee members, there's a lot in this document in here. Read it over again. If you have questions, submit to Jamie a request to have Jessica. It'd be nice to have Joe at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Let me say that. If you would mention to him, maybe he could show up and explain the Southampton, East Hampton water connection and how important this is to be done. I wouldn't mind having Joe here.
We would have approved it tonight. Just let him know that.
Sure, tell him that, see what he says.
To speak on Joe's behalf, he did show up for the property visit from the state with a good contingent from the water department, and they
Yes,
were
he did.
dressed. Yeah, they were all wearing their vests and had lights flashing. It seemed very official.
I think at the,
At the property visit from the state for the grant.
how about town meeting in Southampton? Was our DPW there?
Yeah,
Sure,
Joe and I were both like,
He also attended.
We're not important for Joe, I guess. I don't know.
He also attended a meeting of our water department very early in this whole process.
Let me ask you a stupid question. Did anybody invite him? Did you invite him?
I mean, you provide them the meeting, so.
I know, but that doesn't mean he felt he had to be there. I don't know. Maybe he felt the Southampton people would explain it.
It's fine, I can.
I'm just gonna ask him to come to the
I
next
will.
meeting.
Maybe he just wasn't aware.
Okay, so next meeting, we'll finalize this. Anybody who wants to come? It would be very important. The Finance Committee, I don't think, Jess, I might ask you to come again to the Finance Committee on the 9th for this, but the City Council meeting on the 16th, everybody should come. That's a big vote. I don't think there's gonna be any problem, but if anybody has questions, Southampton representation, you being there, okay? I'm just gonna tell you right now, that's my goal, the 16th public hearing. And Jamie will send out a notice to all of you if that's indeed what happens. Okay? Anything else from the committee on this? Again, if you see anything in there that you suddenly have a question about, let Jamie know so that we can inform Jessica if she has to come or any of the members, okay? And I'd like to thank the owners publicly for sticking with this in spite of the fact that it's taken so long and giving us a discount. This is fantastic. I mean, considering the pressure on you to sell it within the family, I'm sure, but also from developers, thank you very much.
Yes.
We appreciate it. It meant a lot to my aunt. She was the person who is in the letter from 1989, and she cared very much about open space. She was an able lady. She was looking for a way to pass it on to family, and that's how all the cousins, there were 8 of us, and now there are 11 heirs, and she would be so pleased, so incredibly pleased, because it was my grandfather that bought in 1896. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there someone here from Hampshire Council of Governments?
There is.
Okay, give me 2 minutes. I have to visit the little boys' room. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Everybody else, we'll adjourn for a moment.
This project has eaten my life for the last year. It's totally worth it, but it's just long. We got frustrated. We had to sit down because so many obstacles kept coming up and challenges in terms of splitting it up equitably and also doing it according to the regulations for land acquisition. Then I finally pulled all our staff into a meeting. I shut the door. I said, we're not leaving this meeting until we figure this out. And we laid papers across the table, pen and paper, and drew the property and tried to come up with as many plans to make it work. And we went, get on it. Yeah, it's worth it though.
It's really good to see you.
Good to see you too. Take care.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. It all comes together.
Thank you.
Mark and I work together.
Good luck.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
So we have a couple,
Mark,
we have a couple extra
thanks for
copies of the
trustees
application.
reservation.
If anyone wants a hard copy of this application.
They want to print it out, so.
Of this application? Yeah, I saw the 50 pages and.
They give us hard copies as well as.
Of what? What is this?
This is their courthouse application.
I thought they had it here.
Yeah, so that's what I told him.
There's a lot of pages?
That's what I knew at the committee. That's what I told him when I first came in. I said, yeah, I play Alexis.
Oh, this includes a petition?
Does anyone else want a copy for their own?
I got everything.
I have it.
That's the same.
This is the
That's what we
application
sent, right?
that was emailed out.
You gave me one.
We just don't have the petition in here? Do we have a petition?
No, the petition was.
This is different from.
Oh my God, tons of documents.
Just the summary is different. I noticed a small error in one of the numbers, so I just wanted to give you a correction, and the rest is just the presentation that I brought this evening.
Got it.
All right, we're asking for, something's happened. $135,696. Okay, you are Mr.
Hi, I'm Todd Ford. I'm the Executive Director of the Hampshire Council of Governments, and I am, I guess, officially here on behalf of the inhabitants of Hampshire County who officially own the courthouse and its grounds. I'm going to do my best to represent the inhabitants of Hampshire County. I understand that the project is quite different from what you've probably been used to, and glad to save the most challenging one for last. I just have a short presentation about a little bit about the courthouse, if you're interested, a little bit about what we've been able to do and why we are approaching the communities of Hampshire County for this. So I don't know if everyone's familiar with the courthouse on the corner of King Street, Main Street, downtown Northampton. It's been there since 1886. It's one of the most historic pieces of property in Hampshire County. It's had a public facility on that space really since the dawn of the county, and certainly in the beginning of Northampton. The deed for the property and the courthouse itself states that it is owned by the quote inhabitants of Hampshire County. So the Hampshire Council of Governments does not own that building. We simply see ourselves as the caretakers of it. And when the county was abolished in 1999, it was really the only piece that was left to be part of the Council of Governments per se. So it's really the only county-owned piece of property, I think, left in the county. Certainly that site was sites of Shays' Rebellion had a presence there. There was witch trials, slave trials took place on that site. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And it was protected at least 2 times by the citizens of Hampshire County when the state wanted to demolish it, wanted to turn the site into a parking lot, and they also wanted to demolish it to expand the court and bring a brutalistic type of architectural court building to that corner. People at that time rose up and protected it, and the building certainly needs our support and protection one more time. I'm certainly well aware that the facility itself is located in the city of Northampton, so I appreciate your time in just hearing us this evening. But it is really a county resource. There are a lot of events that take place on the property, both inside and out, that are open to the county. Obviously, the law library for the county is located there. Upstairs on the 3rd floor is the Superior Court building that is leased by the state and used by the county. In fact, it was just used for the jury selection of the big murder trial that's coming up. There is an art gallery space on the 2nd floor, which is open for all the Arts Night Out activities. And the grounds itself are used for the summer concert series. Monty's Cancer Connection Campout is there. It's really an active space, and we hope to certainly continue that activity. We began this project with a grant from the Groesbeck Foundation. Groesbeck was a judge who practiced in the space. His heirs also happen to own the Celtics. And so we were able to use that money and really start the preservation process with an architectural assessment that we did my first year in the council in 2011. And that architectural assessment prioritized the many needs that the building has. Back when that was completed several years ago, the total cost of the restoration of the courthouse was about $3.7 million. The first step was to restore the steps and the portico roof, and the second step was to repair the tower, which is what we're here for today. So the steps were able to come together. We made a round of Community Preservation Act fund requests with Northampton, as well as some other communities. And we were able to have the state set aside $4 million in a bond authorization. And the state immediately released $500,000 of that bond authorization, partly in part because the city of Northampton was able to participate with their CPA funds of $100,000 at the time. More on that later. So we began the work of the steps. That was priority number 1. That work is complete. Definitely invite you to come and take a look at what we were able to do there. So both the front steps and the side steps on Gothic Street were basically brought up to code. Were completely preserved using all the original materials. New handrails were added to both. Both had to be completely excavated, taken totally apart, and put back together again because they were sinking into the earth. So we're proud that we're able to go through the first phase, and now we're on the second phase of the project, and we're still trying to raise additional funds for that, because what we've been hearing from the state is in order for DCAM, Department of Capital Asset Management, to recommend to the governor that the money be released, they need to see a lot of public support for the project. And so that's why we've been on this mission to try to raise public support, both monetarily and otherwise, for the project. So to date, we've raised $37,000 from area banks. We have received $100,000 from the Northampton Community Preservation Act Committee. We will be going back to the city of Northampton in this current round, asking for their remainder share, and I'll get into the share calculation in a second. We also received $8,000 from the small town of Goshen, who believed in the county mission that we were talking about, and that it was in fact owned by everyone in the county. And the small town of Goshen was able to donate $8,000 of their Community Preservation Act money. Again, the $300,000 from the Groesbeck Foundation. We are receiving contributions from the legal community, and we're going to open up a memorial fund for a prominent attorney who passed away a couple of years ago. and his family want to create a fund where the monies are going to be split between the courthouse restoration, also some causes that he believed deeply in, and donors $100,000 or more to that fund are going to be added to a plaque that we'll install in the courthouse. We also have a buy a brick campaign, which is more kind of the retail element of it, where you can buy a memorial brick, which will be installed on the new walkway when the project is completed, and we've raised several $1,000s through that campaign as well. The tower itself and the need for this is, I think, really acute. The tower is kind of literally crumbling, and I certainly would invite, if there is interest at all on this committee in the project, certainly invite you to come and tour the facility with me. The tower really hasn't been touched since the building was built in 1886. The terracotta roof is original and needs a lot of improvement. The windows are also original. They've been leaking badly, and all that water is dripping down on the inside of the tower and causing structural damage to the rest of the building itself. So we really think it's a dire need to begin work on the tower. So we are requesting from the city of East Hampton $135,000 and change. And I included in the packet that I handed out tonight kind of the formula breakdown. So we took the total amount of the project, roughly $4 million. We set aside $1.3 million to come from all of the communities of Hampshire County, not just the ones that have adopted the Community Preservation Act, but all the communities. And in various rounds, we have been asking the communities, either through their CPA or just through an outright donation, for their quote share of the overall $1.3 million. And that's broken up by the population size as it was in the 2010 census. So that's where we came up with the $135,000. So the amount requested is approximately 10% of the $1.3 million that we set aside as the city and town share. And I think it's a real critical element of it, simply to show support for this important project. Without the state money, really nothing happens, and we don't get the state money unless they see dramatic support from not only Northampton, but the surrounding communities as well. So with that, I'm here for
So what happens if one or two of these communities balk at this? It just falls through? It has to be unanimous?
No, it doesn't have to be unanimous. I think every bit helps, and I'm not going to delude myself or you that every town is going to participate, certainly not to the level that the formula would indicate, but I think really any type of participation would be helpful.
So how many of these communities are not CPA communities?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have that off.
South Hadley just failed by 7 votes or whatever it was.
Right. I think Northampton's passed by 1 vote, or was that the override?
Holyoke's currently without
Holyoke's
CPA.
considering
but
it.
they're- it's
Yeah, but
coming
that's
down.
not part of our count.
Oh, right.
Counting.
They're
Hampton,
Is Amherst is a CPA community?
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of cash.
Belchertown.
So Goshen and Northampton have already contributed money. Is there any communities you've approached that have said no?
Amherst said no in the first round, which was 3 years ago. Belchertown said no in that first round, but if you say no, we'll be back.
I think the reality is East Hampton is enough of an anchor in the county that if we were to say yes to a project like this, some of the smaller communities would take note, or certainly would fuel momentum for more broader support for
That's an
the
interesting-
county courthouse.
That's an interesting.
I think Northampton needs to also clearly take a leadership role here, but East Hampton and Amherst are the two sort of next largest. Well, South Hadley, I guess, is there too, right? So, but you know, we're, based on our proximity and our relationship with Northampton, you know, we have the possibility of playing an important role in this project. It's a unique kind of project, though. I definitely have a lot of questions relating to it because it's not in our city.
This ownership structure is unusual, isn't it? I mean, aren't the rest of the courthouses owned by the Commonwealth?
Yeah, most of them are.
Yeah.
So
I find it a little odd that the state's sort of saying, oh, well, it's contingent on you providing funding. I mean,
I hear you.
I mean, if this is the only courthouse in the state that's not owned by the Commonwealth, it seems like they ought to be a little bit more open with the pocketbook. You know?
Well, they're given $4 million, aren't they?
They've allocated $4 million, but for each dime of that, for each release of that money, it's big process.
Is there a
Mostly political.
figure that they said, we'll give you the total if you get $1,033,300?
They haven't done it. We've been advised, mostly by Senator Rosenberg's office and others, that if we go in with amounts that are specific to stages of the project, that's the best way to do it. So the tower architect estimates will cost about $1.3 million. And so that's the current apps that we have before the state.
Well, it's important to note that a town like South Hadley, which isn't CPA, if I just heard that right, they're not gonna fund $147,000. That's a lot of community money, which is one of the reasons the CPA works so well, because these kind of projects would never get done if you're not on the CPA. So that's a big chunk of cash. And if Northampton doesn't come through with 240, I won't vote for this. Or seriously, it's right in their community. It's important. I agree. I agree with Greg that it's an important whole county kind of project. But my immediate thought is, how many communities are going to fund this? And if East Hampton funds it and there's no support from Northampton, it's not. I would never vote for it. And I'm just curious. You said 100,000 was approved. Are they holding up on the other 140 or?
Yeah, so we applied for the full 240, and this was 2.5 years ago.
Oh.
In the previous round, and they awarded us $100,000. So we've just submitted an application for the remaining.
Okay. Do you have any thought on whether that would have trouble getting through?
I know they've made some pretty big expenses with their CPA funds lately, mostly for Pulaski Park. So if there's money, I mean, they are aware of the importance of the project. There's a big push to, quote, revitalize downtown, et cetera. So I'm hopeful, and I've already had meetings with the mayor to look at this as a partnership, restore the grounds, which need a lot of work as well. So I'm pretty hopeful.
Pulaski ought to be at least partly a different pot of money coming out of recreation as
Yeah, I
opposed
think
to.
they have funds, and you probably should check their the website to see what their current pool is for historic preservation, but,
It's funny, because to me, I won't vote for it unless somebody else votes for it, and then somebody else isn't gonna vote for it unless we vote for it, so that's kind of a weird cycle. It's a catch-22 kind of cycle, but I have a problem saying yes to something Northampton says no to. I really do.
I wonder, just thinking off the top of my head here, I wonder if it's possible to put sort of a contingency clause in the funding worksheet saying, this funding is contingent on Northampton approving it within
Wow.
6 months or something.
No,
Well,
and I would say.
Northampton did it in stages too, and, the ask is for, whatever it is, 136,000 or something like that. But
We could stage it?
We could stage it too.
Well, how much is the?
Potentially, but I mean, I have many more questions that are unrelated to the dollar amount, just sort of philosophical and otherwise about a project that's in Northampton. I grew up in the DC area in Maryland, and the county structure down there is a lot stronger than it is here in Massachusetts, where we abolished it in 1999. But, so it's become a little bit more parochial among the towns here, who are kind of doing their own thing. But, I think there is something to be said for the usage and the sort of prominence of the county courthouse as the last remaining communally owned structure in Hampshire County.
And that says to me, when they didn't buy it, I don't know the politics behind it, but it says to me, if they wanted to build a modern courthouse there and tear it down, if we don't fix it locally, that's what they'll do. They'll buy it, and then they'll tear it down. I mean, they were gonna do that before, and we protected it, right? I mean, that's just a guess, but, so the pressure is, the reason they left it this way, I think, is so that the community, hey, you wanna keep this, you pay for it. We'll give you bonding, but you better show us support. I would be willing to do a contingency based on something like 60% of the community's approved funding, something like that. Not just Northampton. Northampton's big, but if it's Northampton, and nothing from Amherst, even if they gave us a little, that bothers me.
Yeah.
They don't consider it important. Because and the other reason for that is it's kind of community-based. It's in Northampton, so what if they build a new ugly courthouse? We don't care, we're in Amherst. I don't agree with that myself, because Northampton is the county. I mean, if you go to court, that's where you go.
You were channeling Amherst.
Oh, it's $318,000 at the top of the list. Harry!
I think the whole key to this thing is Salt Hadley. I mean, the communities that do have CPA money, well, the money is already there. It's been appropriated, it's sitting there to be spent. And how a city like South Hadley, they don't have a CPA, so where's it gonna come from? You know, I just can't
They're not gonna
imagine a
approve it.
CPA going to say, we want $147,000 from the residents of South Hadley. Where's it gonna come from?
They're not gonna do it.
They're not.
I totally don't
No
agree
way in
with
the
you.
world.
But I wouldn't say no to the project because South Hadley said no.
Yeah, we have to be, I think we have to be resigned to
Realistic.
the fact that there's gonna be some level of inequity in the funding across all the towns in the
Excellent.
county.
Well said.
I mean,
It's gonna
that's
happen.
just, you know, if we're gonna get miffed about some, you know, or petty about one town not pulling their fair share, then this project is, or the funding that's required for this project is probably not gonna happen.
But given that it's in Northampton, that's a key. If they decide they don't wanna fund it, I won't vote for
Yeah,
this.
Northampton definitely has to speak up.
They have to say yes, because it's in their community, and every resident that passes there, probably once a week, they see this building.
So,
Go ahead.
help me understand how this building operates, right? Like, so the owner of the building is the inhabitants of Hampshire County, so like the electric bill doesn't come to my door, right? It come to everybody in the
Yeah.
county. So who's operating this building right now? Is this
The Council of Governments.
the Council of Governments?
Yeah.
Is
And you have a budget from someplace, right?
Our fee for service, yeah. So we receive no tax money other than the $24,000 total from the member communities, of which East Hampton is not one. The rest of our $11 million budget comes from our fee for service programs and services.
And do you get rent from the state for?
Yeah, we do get rent for the third floor, which is the historic Superior Court, as
Yep.
well as the law library in the basement.
Any plans to use that historic courtroom anymore? 'Cause, I know you mentioned that the jury selection for their entire trial was there, but I mean, when I was practicing up in Northampton, that thing never got used.
No, not much. It's used for swearing-in ceremonies, kind of some larger trials and, you know, jury selections, mock trials, student stuff, things like that.
I don't know why they use that all the time, so
Because
those
the
windows.
acoustics are horrible.
Oh, is that right?
So they've been installing a new sound system, which they hope will be ready in the next month or two, and then they plan to use it.
Oh, good, good. Save to fund something for, you know, like a courtroom that's gonna sit vacant for
So this,
95% of the time.
Greg, are you done? I'm sorry, your questions?
No, I'm
I have
done.
one.
Yep.
You're also.
Oh, I mean, I have other comments, but you're ready to go, Dan.
I just wanted to ask, we're pretty much funding this phase for the tower? Is that what
Yes.
you're asking? And how much was that? I know it's in here, but
The total tower budget was about $1.3 million.
so it is 1.3. And how much of that comes from CPA and how much of that comes from the grant, if we get it?
It's not a grant, it's a
Bond, whatever.
It's a bond authorization. So it totally depends on how much we get from the state. I mean, but for the state, almost nothing happens. I mean, maybe some emergency repairs, but really the key is the state money.
But does the state require us to fund a certain amount of money
It's
to
not-
leverage any of that bonding?
It's not a grant, so they don't require it, it's politics. So with,
The Senate President is your,
I certainly understand, we have his support as well as Kulik and Kokot, Sidak and the others. But it is coming from a administration that is another party, and they march up to governor for that. So it is politics, and as the Senate President has advised us, you know, the more local support from more towns, better shot that they have of getting DCAM to release the funds.
and you've gone to every community so far?
We haven't gone to every, well, we have gone to every community during the last round, so you are my first discussion this
Did we
round.
give you money last time?
No.
We didn't. That's important to know. I don't
You were
remember, how
here.
long
You
ago
came
was
here.
that?
I don't remember this particular, you might have, maybe you said,
Do you-
There was a
do you
meeting
know
room
what year it
downstairs.
was?
there wasn't even a meeting.
Do you know what year it was?
Do you know what year it was?
Probably 2011.
Wow. Ed Sparko said no.
Yeah.
This committee.
Good. No, don't even bother showing up.
No question about it.
wasn't even a question, I'm sure.
I remember the Amherst meeting.
Were you on it, Harry? Do you remember?
No.
You weren't on in 2011 either?
No,
I thought you've been here since like 1920 or something.
no, the planning board, yeah, but not this.
Okay.
So, you know,
That's
one
interesting.
one of my thoughts on this is, you know, unfortunately, our historic commission rep is not, John isn't here tonight, but it's unusual to get a request like this coming from outside of East Hampton, and it would be nice if the Historic Commission championed this. This is really a historic preservation project.
Great point.
And having somebody in our community who really embraces it and believes in it and is, getting back to your politics, the local politics side of this, even from the optics kind of, you know, we have East Hampton taxpayer dollars that we're charged with expending responsibly. And to, you know, I personally don't have any issue sort of taking the lead and putting some of our East Hampton taxpayer dollars towards a project like this. But it doesn't necessarily look good for somebody outside of our community coming in and asking for working, you know, taxpayer dollars in East Hampton to then kind of go and go over Northampton. So having somebody in the community who's really kind of championing the project that's here in East Hampton would help. I know that's more legwork for you because you've got a bunch of different, you know, and that's also why I'm kind of bummed that John's not here because he could possibly.
He's in Helsinki, we knew about this.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I don't know what the Historic Commission would say about a project.
Harry's on the
like this, but
Historic Commission.
That's just a thought.
Harry's on
I'm
the
on the
Historic
Historic Commission.
Oh, you are? Well, so what are your thoughts, Harry?
I'm not a chair, I mean, John's the chair.
John Bruno's
I mean, not the
the
chair, but he's a member with myself.
Yeah, so.
He's the representative, but.
Right.
You're for planning board, but you're on the commission.
Right.
Okay, well, what do you think?
Well, what would have to happen, you have to come before the Historic Commission and let us know what he wants to do, and we take it up and look at it and everything else, and then make a recommendation, you know, to come back here.
I think that's a great way to go about this. I think Greg has a great point. Historic preservation in our community, right now, we are looking at a town hall that needs considerable renovation on the second floor. And we're looking at that big time because it's direct to East Hampton's economic development, lots of things that can happen with that.
That's a big project.
And to put money into Northampton before that project is hard. It's another hard question. So we'd like to hear from the Historic Commission because that's where the competing dollars go from. CPA money, historic preservation, and not in East Hampton. So I'd like their support. That's a great point. That's a good one. And to me, if you came back to us and Northampton voted unanimously to support this, that would help. So that's where I'm at.
Understood. Thank you. I agree.
And I could find out from Ed Sparkle why they said no last time.
I can check and just make sure.
But, I mean,
I don't happen though.
There's no doubt in my mind.
I know him too, Harry.
Quite the character.
Probably signed at the door and said no.
Can you talk about I mean, and I know you said East Hampton isn't one of the communities for the
Hampshire Council of Governments.
Like, can you talk about East Hampton's connection to the Hampshire Council of Governments or lack thereof? But like,
we used to be
sort of talking about like the optics.
I used to sit as one of the East Hampton. There were two, J.P. Kaczynski and for a brief time myself before East Hampton exited had two representatives, mayoral representatives that went and sat on the Hampshire Council of Governments. But it was a decision of East Hampton to pull their membership from the Council of Governments back in 2005.
I remember voting for it because of economics. We felt that the services that the assessment was big, and we felt the economics for our city said we can do better just keeping it in-house, whatever services they were. I think insurance was one of them. There's lots of things that was happening, and we didn't feel that we were using the taxpayers' money efficiently, I think, to say.
And just, just a little bit of background on the Hampshire Council of Governments. I think the economics are such that it benefits smaller communities because
I remember that.
One of the things that it does is help kind of large purchasing power. When smaller communities come together, they can get better deals on any number of things, including electricity nowadays.
East Hampton uses our purchasing co-op.
Yeah.
And our health insurance.
So,
we do
there are benefits there, but I think the calculation for many communities was in some ways based on, we're a large enough community, can we get some of the benefit on our own without having to pay the Council of Governments? And I think that was the calculus a little bit for East Hampton in determining, well, it doesn't make sense.
But you just made a connection that I didn't realize. the Hampshire Trust of Healthcare program is run by Hampshire Council of Governments. That's big. That's huge money for the city of East Hampton, all our healthcare. And we've been on that for years, and it's been pretty good. They haven't had, this year was the first premium increase we've had in years, so. That's important to note, that we do have some services still coming from Council of Government.
We've tried to make it like not about the council per se, because, you know,
It's a bill.
if it wasn't for us, someone else would have to do this, but, you know, certainly glad to.
But I think it's important just for sort of the sense that like as the residents of Hampshire County, it's almost like Hampshire County City Hall, you know, the way that the funding of this building would happen, it sort of feels like that would be the only, like the current use of the, like, the current use connection, you know what I mean? And not just like a building in Northampton, but like this is, we're actually, it's
Well,
still active, you know what I mean? Like Hampshire, I mean, in this small way, Hampshire County is still active, and therefore.
Well, I can certainly send you a kind of a breakdown of the current services that the city utilizes. It'd be our retired senior volunteer program, so there's probably dozens and dozens of senior volunteers coordinated through our RSVP program that provides service here in East Hampton. The group insurance trust, our purchasing co-op, there's probably some similar as well.
To me, it's about historic preservation of a county building, county courthouse, because we wouldn't ask the CPA in Northampton to help us with our town hall. They wouldn't ask us to help them with their town hall renovations because it's a historic building. I think it's called Memorial Hall, I forget. But I'm not against this, but I'd like, number one, to see the Historic Commission, our Historic Commission's opinion on it, because, again, with John and Harry on our board, they need to realize that this takes money away from future use for historic preservation, in a sense, depending on when we approve it. What's your timeline on this? I mean, this may take a little while, given that we'd like Northampton to say something on it first.
So this is a fairly long-term project. So the current priority is the tower. The minute I get the 1.3 million from the state, I'm rehabbing that tower.
And they're not necessarily waiting for us, or are they waiting for CPA?
Politically, they're waiting, but there's no official wait for it. If a miracle happened that they could do this, you know, come on.
They allocated the money, why are they holding?
And then, there are subsequent phases of it as well. So that's just the front, the south-facing facade. The entire building needs to be taken apart up to the first course of brownstone. All that granite needs to be taken out. If you take the granite away and stick your finger, you can go all the way through to the.
So how structurally dangerous is this right now?
It's not structurally soundish to be in. Yeah, I mean, when that earthquake happened maybe 4 years ago, I mean that swayed tremendously. While there hasn't been any.
Have you had the engineers inspect this? I mean.
Yeah, the architecture had part of it, and that was certainly, you know, that's why it's phased the way it's phased, because the steps were, you know, one of the first things that were sinking, pulling away from the structure itself, and now the tower, which is, you know, very tall and very weak at the top, really needs to be rehabbed immediately.
I would like to see them release the money immediately, given that. I mean, you're waiting for governments that have difficult decisions to make. It's not in our community, et cetera, et cetera. That scares me. And it goes back to my thinking politically, well, if it falls down now, we'll tear it down.
Well, and you know.
Unless it kills somebody.
Unless I'm working there at the time.
I mean, that worries me. I mean, this is a historic gem for the county. So the building has to be preserved, in my opinion. Like it has to be preserved. You know.
Harry, go ahead.
Harry, go ahead.
Does this mean to be coming back? If this is only one phase, are you coming back to us again?
No, no. Once the city or town like Goshen, we're done with Goshen. They gave exactly what we asked, so we're never going back. So
you'll never come back to us again?
So it's a one-time deal?
It's a one-time deal up to your allocated amount in the formula. The reason why we're going back to Northampton is because
they only gave 100 out of
they
their
did it in stages.
No, I mean, if you continue this project on, and you're gonna do some more work on this thing, is that gonna be more funding, or?
Not during my lifetime, sir.
No, because they got the $4 million from the state, and I think the state is just waiting to see if any of the communities do it. But they can't wait if something is dangerous that this is happening.
No, so we have tours planned, not only with media, to kind of
Good.
make it fun, but also, you know, with the district attorney, we're gonna invite people out from DCAM, certainly the legislators, but it is very much a political,
Do you have engineering studies that indicate it's
We have the-
severe danger, or how dangerous this is right now?
that's a, we don't have engineering studies, we have studies from the architect that
Well.
have pretty emphatic language.
And they're educated, it's not like they don't know what they're doing. It's not like a political statement, it's an engineering
Right,
statement, it's an
yeah.
architectural statement. Okay?
Can I suggest that we continue the conversation maybe at another meeting? Just given this time.
I would like to, finish this up, and I would like you to, before you come back to us, go to the Historic Commission in East Hampton. I'll ask Jamie to send you the emails of whoever the chair is, John Berner, Harry knows. She can give you the context there, and ask to be on their agenda at the next meeting, that we want their opinion on the project. You're gonna have to do the same thing you did here tonight.
Sure.
To them, because, again, and I'll speak to John directly, this does compete, in a sense, with their ideas of projects they may want.
When's your timing to go back to Northampton CPA and?
So we just filed with Southampton today, I believe. Northampton's application will be due at the end of the month.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, guys.
Yep. It was a long meeting, guys.
In regards to
Give me that back. Give me
agenda,
for his next meeting.
when they'll come back.
I want them to be put on the applications on hold areas. So we're gonna put your application on hold until Jamie hears back from you, and you'd have to come in hand with a recommendation from the Historic Commission. If they say they're not gonna support it, you're out of luck, I'm afraid.
Pressure's on.
What can I say?
When you come to when you come to the Historic Commission, if you could have an updated funding list of who's contributing, who hasn't to that point, it would certainly help.
I don't think that's a fair statement. I think if he finds local champion here in East Hampton to take it on, he has an audience. I'd love that champion to be the Historic Commission, but if there is a significant voice here in the community that feels strongly, they can bring it before the CPA, and I'm willing to hear them.
Okay, I agree with that. That might have been too extreme. But for me, the Historic Commission support is big, and that's me.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree
Well, that's my
with-
preference, too.
I don't disagree with that. If you want to be that champion, Greg, that's great. But,
Oh, I sit on the committee, so I'm not gonna be the champion, but I do
Oh, it's all right. You
believe, I
can
do believe that
champion.
it helps to have somebody coming from the community, so.
right. In other words, if the Historic Commission says no and you want to try a different route, so we'll listen to you again, even if they...
Stand next time.
No, but you can talk.
All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we have nothing else. Everything else is on hold. I like that. So put this one on hold until we hear from them. And I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next meeting is October 20th. Okay. Thanks, guys.
It's crazy, it's not open space.
Yeah,
It's really
Like, if it was a state-owned building, it would have been dealt with a long time ago, it feels like to me. Like, every other courthouse is owned by the state. Like,
That's the strangest,
I gotta turn it off.
like it's owned by an entity that doesn't even exist.
Don't say stuff.
collective